Where do you feel at home? Is feeling at home about the people in your life, a culture, a community, day-to-day activities, a physical structure? 15 years ago, I completed a qualitative research study on a men's homeless shelter. I spent a year visiting and listening to the men's stories about their experiences with the shelter. I interviewed those associated with the operations of the shelter, the director, her staff, and board members, along with a group interview with community participants from agencies involved in the residents' life. I found that the residents' emotional connection to the shelter was one of a feeling of home. I discovered that what the residents valued in the shelter is what I value in a home. The shelter, located in the inner city, provided long-term residency options with a harm reduction philosophy. 68 men were provided with dormitory beds and shared meals within a secure setting, locked doors at night, 24-hour monitoring. The staff and the director worked with other inner city agencies to access those necessary services required by the men. According to the director and the staff, the shelter accommodated a subsector of the homeless population trapped in a cycle of homelessness because of chronic substance abuse and or severe and persistent mental illnesses. The first time I walked into the shelter, the idea of a home did not enter my mind. I was distracted by the walls of this rundown structure and the faces of men whose appearances reflected hardships and suffering. But 2 weeks into my visits, I began to experience a sense of comfort being in the presence of these interesting personalities. And the men started to experience comfort and trust in my presence, and affectionately gave me the street name Anne of Green Gables, an indication of their wit. The shelter took on a home-like atmosphere where residents interacted with other residents and staff and established emotional bonds. Warmth and human connections were enriched with stories that carried laughter and humor, similar to the lighthearted and funny interactions in my own home. So how did a shelter evolve into a place where residents trapped in a cycle of homelessness internalize the deeper meaning of home? I learned from the residents that the shelter's regulations did not compromise its home-like atmosphere to the extent they felt institutionalized. Like the residents, being free within a limit to make my own choices, even if those choices do not always have a good outcome for me, has been my experience of home. As time went on, I became aware of a community within the inner city of men and women who understood and accepted the residents. I realized that my needs were not unlike the residents' needs. Access to washroom and laundry facilities brought dignity to their lives. A casual job or collecting and recycling resellable items from the garbage bins gave some of the men a purpose. Memories of special planned celebrations captured in keepsakes and pictures reminded me of those special celebrations in my own family. Men, once faceless, once isolated, now had a face. As told to me by one of the residents, he no longer feared dying alone on the streets in his own filth. The men had a personal space where they were greeted and addressed by name, shared memories, feelings, and opinions gave meaning to the men's life. A plaque on the wall with the name of deceased residents acknowledges their lives in death. Now, from this experience, the meaning of home changed for me. From a personal space that goes beyond a physical structure and provides a sense of connection and grounding in this world. I met a resident who had just returned to the shelter. He was incoherent and believing evil spirits were following him. His hair was matted and greasy and clothes covered with grime. But in spite of his mental state, he was able to let the custom officials know that this shelter is his home. Just that he was now under the watchful and concerned eye of the director who was arranging medical services for him. Does that only show the meaning of home that goes beyond a physical structure, that went beyond a mind disconnected from most of reality? As written in 2002 by Max Van Manen, a Canadian scholar, how can we understand something that we have not experienced ourselves? One useful approach is to employ the theme of sameness and differences. We can understand how people differ by being attentive to what we share in common, by showing how we are different through sameness. Are the factors that created a home for the residents the same for you? Being valued as an individual in a relationship, an identification with a culture, an accepting and supportive community, purposeful day-to-day activities, and a physical structure that you can call home. Wherever we find a place to call home varies for all of us because of our diverse characteristics and needs. A small sector of the homeless population found a home relatable to them. So is the solution to homelessness building structures? Is that the only solution? Or is the solution creating homes from these structures? Creating homes within supportive communities, relatable to the diverse characteristics and needs within the homeless population.